Hey there, Emma here, and in 2023 I hosted a painting challenge called Dogtober where we painted a different dog breed every day of the month. You may have seen some of the clips that I posted on Shorts at the time, just showing like a few little clips from each painting, but I've decided to go and pull out the real-time footage and share them this year so you can follow along if you'd like to. A couple of disclaimers/explainers. The point of the challenge for me was that I wanted to try and loosen up. I'm a realistic portrait artist, and so I gave myself a smaller size to work with as well as a time frame. I'm painting on roughly about A6 size paper, which is pretty small. In terms of measurements, that's like roughly 10.5 centimeters by 14.8 centimeters or 4.1 by 5.8 inches. And I also tried to set myself a time limit of about 15 minutes. I really wanted to challenge myself to loosen up, but you can approach this any way you like. Maybe you'll do it in a different medium or a certain color palette. The options are endless, totally up to you, but you're more than welcome to follow along, and these are kind of like mini tutorials. I do want to point out though that as this was unusual for me and a challenge to me, not all of them are that good. I really struggled in the beginning to start loosening up, and particularly struggled with the long-haired dogs. But you know, it's an adventure and you'll see me progress through the month and learn a lot. If you want to grab the outline sketches, I have put all 31 sketches into a document, a PDF that you can download from my website. I will link that in the description. You'll just need to pop your email address in, which will sign you up to my mailing list, but then you'll get the document with all 31 outline sketches, roughly about the same size that I'm painting. You're more than welcome to print them, trace them, size them up or down if you need to. I'll be working with my usual set of supplies and mixing colors as well, but I will talk you through the process as we go. Let's jump in. Day 10, and we are painting a cavalier. When I saw this photo, I just could not resist. It is so cute. It's got its little head down, its bum up, it's looking up. Super cute. We're going to get started with our colors, and we're going back to the regular. We had one day where we did something different, and now we're going back to the classic orange and brown, but that's okay. We will get some more mixture throughout the month. So I am making up an orange, which we are going to mix up with primary yellow and red, and then we're going to turn a little bit of that puddle into a bit of a brownie color, and that is going to help us shade some areas. We are also going to shade some areas with a bit of a blue color, so let's get started. We've got the orange happening there, and we do need a fair bit of it, hence the kind of large puddle. Now I'm adding a little bit of blue to the top part of that, and that is going to help us create our brown color. So blue and orange are opposite on the color wheel. They then neutralize each other and create a variety of browns depending on how much of each you have in there. You'll see I keep adding a little bit of red. I always find that my mixture of blue and orange has a green undertone, so I always need to add some more red in there to cancel that out, as red and green are opposite on the color wheel. A little bit more yellow in there as well, and red, just to bring that back a little bit so it's not too dark. And then a little bit more blue, just adjusting that. The thing I love about color mixing is you're never stuffed. Like you never can go too far one way and it's ruined, usually, unless you're after a really bright, punchy color, bright and light. But usually you can adjust it back and forth to either get, a temperature that you want or an exact color. We are going to get started with a partial wet on wet layer. So I'm just wetting down the back of the dog. We are not going to paint the head wet on wet. And I really like the combination of the techniques in this one. I've been saying throughout the series so far, I wish I strayed more away from wet on wet, but I think this is actually the perfect application. So I've just popped in 2 little splotches along the back and leaving that area alone now. I'm moving straight into the brown color, and I'm just popping the little shadows between the toe beans. So we're just trying to shade between the toes. Get started there. I'm also just dabbing off a bit of excess moisture and color off my brush, just to go a little bit in between them, and like instead of the gap between the toes, I'm also shading the toes. And now with my orange, we are going to start on the markings on the face. So I'm taking this beautiful bright orange and we are going around the eyes, and they also have big, beautiful eyes. I think this might be the biggest eyes we've painted so far, which is fun. With water on my brush, I'm inviting that upwards towards the top of the head. We don't want to touch the patch that we've just been creating on the back of the dog, wet on wet. Leave a slight gap there so it doesn't interrupt what we're doing here. But dipping into some more concentrated orange for around the eye and now some brown, we are going to tuck this color right up against the side of the face and between the foot, and then back to some orange to just kind of blend that. We don't want there to be like stark differences between these colors. We want it to look like a natural gradient that's just darker at the bottom because it is shaded. But this is looking so cool already. Dipping into some orange, and I've just added a little bit more, trying to separate where the ear is going to be, flopping over. And then we are going to do the same thing basically on the right side. So going very carefully around the eye, rinsing off, dabbing off, inviting that up towards the top of the head with water. We've got that lovely white marking down the center of the face and onto the muzzle, which we will leave alone. We'll do a little bit of shading on there with some blue. Dipping into the brown now to tuck that in between the face and the foot, just like the other side. And a little bit of orange as well as more of a transition color. Make that all look natural. Doing a few little flicky strokes of fur out to the side just to show that it's a longer haired dog. And now with a light wash of this color, I'm just going over the little toe shadows again, just to pop another color in there, another value. We don't want it to look so stark. With some light orange now, I'm just kind of dabbing around the nose, popping some little, we can think of them as freckles, popping some little freckles on the face. Just some little markings around that nose. We don't want to put them on the nose because we're going to paint the nose in and it'll just get covered. Now before this back layer that is wet on wet dries off, I'm going to put a little bit more orange in it. And with some black, I'm just going straight into Mars black. I'm going to paint the nostrils in. So if you want to mix your own black, you can do that with the 3 primary colors. Some people have success mixing them together in equal amounts all at once. I generally aim for a purple color with blue and red, then mix in some yellow, which will neutralize that color and give you a more natural black. But I'm just cheating so far and going straight into a Mars black for this one. I've now taken some primary blue on my palette and it is very quite watery. And I'm also not being upset if some other random colors mix in there a little bit. With this watery blue, we are going to start shading some of the cooler shadows. So a very light wash of blue over the bottom of those feet on top of the brown. Also on the bottom of the face, the white of the muzzle on either side of the nose. Tucking that in there. Dipping into a bit more, dabbing off the excess, and I'm just going to pop a little bit on the side of the dog at the back and the top of its backside as well. Spreading that out with some water. Then a little bit down the middle of the face on the white marking. Spread that out with water. Getting a bit more of that color on the palette. A little bit more intensely and making this a bit of a blue-violet color. So like a dark blue basically by adding a little bit of red. And now I'm going to paint the nose in. So we are going to tuck that all the way to the bottom of the nose and then keep the top part a bit lighter. So rinsing off, dabbing off, and then filling that in with a bit of a lighter value across the top. And then a little bit more color to finish off the bottom of the nose. I feel like I've been doing the noses so far either black or purple black, but I've used more of a blue color this time to tie it in with the blue we're using down the bottom. So I've just popped some of that concentrated blue in between the toe beans as well, deepening up the shadow there and infusing that color in there. And now what we want to do is actually put a shadow on the ground. I don't think we've done this yet. So I'm sweeping just some water right underneath the dog, dipping into the color and just touching that at the topmost part under the dog. So we want it to be the most shaded under the dog, and then invite this color downwards and fade it away like a gradient. And that's just going to make it look as natural as possible. You can go as heavy with this shadow as you like. I'm not going to lean, too far on that side. I'm going to keep it a little bit light, but you don't want it to look out of place. So popping that in, tucking it right up against the dog, rinsing off, dabbing off, and then using my brush to smooth it out. Because sometimes you get those little spidery little things coming out of the paint because it kind of is traveling through the ridges and the valleys of the paper. So your brush will help to smooth those out. Dipping now into some brown, and we are going to paint the eyes in. So we want to position these eyes at the top of the eyeball cavity that we've saved for them. And we will leave some white at the bottom of them because we want to give the impression that it's looking upwards. We're also going to make it look like it's looking a little bit up and to the left, so positioning it a little bit more over to the left side as well when you pop this in. Take your time with this. It's going to be very hard to remove this once you put it down without covering it up with something like white. So take your time, pop that circle-shaped iris on the top left of the eye space that we've negatively painted. It's looking so cute. I love its expression. So sweet. Perfect. Rinsing off, dabbing off, and I'm just going to shade a little bit of this eye, the gap at the very bottom of the white shape. So basically the opposite side, we're painting a little crescent in the bottom right of the eyes. I'm now going to start doing some shading on the face with a watery orangey brown color. So we are basically popping in a little eyebrow shape here. It does look quite stark at first, but we will, blend it all out a bit. A little bit of color directly on top of, directly around the eye on the top left as well. Taking some color underneath it to kind of shade this cheek area between the foot and the ear. Taking that upwards where the ear would be starting, rinsing off, dabbing off, inviting some of that color over and intensifying it in that gap as well. A little bit over the top of the head. We're giving everything some shape now. It's very flat at the moment if you compare sides. A little bit of orangey brown directly under the white of the eye. A little bit more over the top of the eye. Orangey brown, and now we can do the other side, a similar thing. So carving in a little eye crease and then an eyebrow and pointing that up in the middle. It's got like a really sweet expression. Taking that down the middle of the face on the orange part of the fur, under the eye. It looks like it almost looks at the moment like it's just got in trouble. Putting some brown on the face down the bottom between the muzzle and the paw, and then using water to invite that upwards towards the ear crease, deepening that up, bringing it up and fading it over. Flicking some strokes inwards to the face and some strokes outwards as well. Not taking that all the way to the edge of the ear, both ears. I want to keep the ears quite light on the very tips. But we are going to dry that all off for now. I'm going to pop the highlights in now on the eyes and the nose, so dipping into some white. And I'm going to do the highlights like a little bit unevenly. I'm going to do like a really drastic one on the left and then a smaller one on the right. So really big one on the left, and I do that like a bit of a squiggle as I go. And then just a little dot on the top left of the right one and a little crescent on the bottom of that, but I don't really love how that looks. It looks like I've cut the pupil off a little bit. A little dab on top of the top left of the nose. I'm going to grab my brush now and dip into some brown. Pop a little bit of black in there as well. And I'm just going to tuck that under the highlight. I actually accidentally touched it as well and made it even bigger. But here I was trying to just shade a little bit of the eye near the highlight just to make it look like there's a pupil in there somewhere. So I've dried that off so that I can just carve this highlight on the left in more, because what happened was I touched my brush up against it and just spread it further. So I'm really deepening up around those highlights now. But I really don't like that little crescent highlight I did on the right eye down the bottom. I think it cuts off the shape of the iris, so I would fix that if I had my time again. Dipping back into the blue colour, I'm going to further shade the face. So popping some more shadow under the snoot on the nose and just making that a little bit bigger. Looks like it's really burying its little face into the floor. Drying that off to lock it all in. Dipping into some orange, and I just want to make the shapes that we painted around the eye a little less dramatic. So I'm just trying to add another colour in there and just really melt everything together in this region so it doesn't look so intense. So making it a darker orange around the eyes. Popping that colour in near the ear as well. I'm going to scrub away at some of the eyebrow rather than continually just adding colour to the area. You can also just do this, scrub a little bit away. It helps just reduce the intensity of what you've painted. It takes the edges away from it basically. With some blue, I'm just going to paint in what should be the tail, but I'm just kind of like guessing. It's just this big white fluffy tail. I'm just popping a little very pale blue blob at the very back of it, coming out from its backside. That will do for the tail. Into the brown now, and just shading a little bit more around the eye, like directly on top of the eye, just to kind of push that back into the head a little bit. I felt like I was just trying to make it look a bit younger. I felt maybe I'd created a bit of an older looking dog expression with all the lines. So I was just trying to soften this area and have it look a bit more puppyish. Taking a very light wash of colour into the white of the eyes as well, underneath, just so that's not so pure stark white. And then we're going to dry that off, and that is our sweet little cavalier. Hope you like this one, and I'll see you in the next one.